Froebel was the inventor of kindergarten. He wanted to give children the opportunity through the occupations to express themselves and to learn about the wider work in ways that are right for childhood. And this might include parquetry or sticks, drawing, paper pricking, sewing, weaving, paper folding, stick and pea constructions, playing with clay, gardening and cooking.
I think in a Froebelian approach, we need to think about the occupations being very much connected. So it's not just about, craft activities and thinking, oh, today I'll get the clay out, or I think we'll do a bit of sewing tomorrow. It's really connected to the children's previous experiences and what they are bringing. And it links to their own identity, their own family and their own community.
And I think that's what I really love about the approach. It's not shallow, it's really deep. And it really does think about the whole child, their experiences, their relationship with themselves, how they contribute to a family and a community, and their relationship with the wider world.
The occupations was where Froebel really wanted children to be linking with the cultural context they're growing up in, the everyday life experiences. He talks about the forms and the forms of everyday life, the forms of beauty, where you're looking at patterns and symmetry and asymmetry. And that cultural dimension comes in very, very strongly in that. And looking at the actual knowledge that we have around different areas, mathematics that you learn from the gifts that you've been playing with, and then that broadens and deepens as you are working with the occupations. And they're not linear. These are things which are offered to children as part of the general curriculum and pedagogy.
The first thing to really emphasise is that children are powerful learners. They have this self-motivation to construct learning. And the occupations are very much central to this. They give children those opportunities to explore and experiment, to really develop their creativity. It gives them the opportunity to try new things, to take risks, to take on new challenges and experiences. Embedded within the occupations is multiple opportunities for problem solving through hands-on experiential learning. It really is learning through doing at its best.
Froebel saw children, babies, as being creative beings. And that was, essential. That first activity of the child and developing that agency. Creativity was about combining things in innovative ways. So for Froebel, that comes through open-endedness of the materials. So you might look at some of the materials, the gifts and occupations, and think they look quite closed. But actually the whole idea was that children played with those materials and began to create things that expressed their own inner ideas in an outer form.
Quite often we offer children opportunities or activities and they're closed. You can only do one thing with them. Friedrich Froebel really encourages us to think about how we structure, how we organise our learning environment, and how open our environment is.
Creativity was not about being an artist. It wasn't about, the expressive arts. You could be sort of scientifically creative. You could be mathematically creative. So creativity is about combining things in unique ways. And every individual is going to do that in a different way. So the materials that are thought of as being Froebelian occupations can give different people different opportunities to express themselves in different ways.
When I think about Froebel's gifts, for instance, all the gifts build on previous knowledge. So the whole idea is that you build on something that's familiar and then you're able to introduce something that is not so familiar. And the key role of an educator is to observe what children are interested in, or observe what they're wanting to do. And I guess That's where the idea of unity and connectedness comes in. Because if you're building on what children already know, they're able to make very, very, very meaningful connections. And you can see how all of their knowledge will build on their previous knowledge. And what they're doing in their exploration is kind of modifying their thinking and analysing and organising and reinterpreting their thoughts.
They start with soft spheres, they move to the second gift, which is the hard wooden sphere with the cylinder and the cube. And, there's a gradual journey there with children learning about hard edges and angles and solids. And then the next gifts are all about cubes and split cubes becoming prisms.
The occupations really develop the gifts and extend them, giving children multiple opportunities to express themselves through a variety of different media. The occupations themselves are wide-ranging, and there's a beautiful development, particularly in terms of the geometries, where we move from the gifts to the parquetry tiles, to working with line, with sticks, to working with points, with pin pricking, and then back onto line, whether it's with paper folding or with stitching, and then back onto three-dimensional form with stick and pea work, or malleable form with clay, or with constructional form with woodwork. So lots of opportunities for children to discover the expressive potentialities of the material as they learn a language of working with each of the different media.
What we do is we give children the wooden blocks, the gifts, and we give children the clay. That would be one of the first things we would want to give the children, because then they're getting the malleable experience as well as the hard experience. And we're taking children out into their everyday world of their lives. We start looking at pottery, ceramics, why do you need clay, different sorts of soil, what do you find in a river? Some rivers have lots of sand, some have a lot of clay that you go, you start to learn geography, you start to look at ecology, saving the planet. All these things start to come into the discussions. So whereas a lot of people in a very generalised way in early childhood education would offer children clay, Froebelians are thinking about what is the point of offering children play, because the way you offer those occupations is absolutely fundamental to Froebel.
It's really important with the occupations to keep them open-ended. And in that sense, children can explore in the way that they want to explore. They have the freedom and the autonomy to create what they'd like to create and express their imagination in ways that is meaningful for them as they make sense of the world around them. But in this sense, because children are making what they want to make, they'll essentially be creating their own problems and challenges. But because they're making what they want to make, they'll have that intrinsic motivation to persevere, to resolve, to problem solve in the process. So that really just draws in that really rich, high level creativity in the making process.
When you're observing children, you can then support them to move on to, not to tell them the answer, but to think of different answers, which is about problem solving and extending their own ideas. It's not about imposing our ideas, it's about supporting children to express their own ideas.
When you're with the child, you can begin to deepen the way that they're using that occupation. So there will be different starting points for different children, and that's just fine, because you're beginning where the child is, start where the learner is, he would say, and you're finding out what interests children, what's really fascinating them, and then you can take them a little bit further in that journey. So freedom with guidance, allowing children to find what fascinates them, but then helping them to be even more fascinated. That's the freedom with guidance.
So we need to give children that freedom to work at their own pace. And typically with the occupations, we see exceptional levels of sustained engagement as children get absorbed in a creative flow, as they get absorbed in the problem solving, of exploring different ways of expressing their imagination. And we know that when children are in this state, it's incredibly enriching for the human spirit. It elevates the human soul when we're expressing ourselves in creative ways with these deep levels of sustained engagement.
If we're thinking about sewing and thinking about that in relation to very young children, probably not many people would think about, that sewing would be something that very young children would do. Sometimes people are very concerned about the possible risk of having sharp objects with young children. So we think about, what is appropriate for that child and what are they interested at the stage they're at. So very young children, it might be actually just exploring the textures and the feel of the fabrics and seeing the difference between different fabrics and the textures of them and how the surface of the fabric is and maybe even how it's been constructed. And then maybe moving on to think more about the threads that make up fabric and how we might use those threads to express ideas. Through these occupations, children can communicate a lot of ideas themselves, and actually it's very absorbing. It also, in a way, can be a shared language without necessarily words. So you can be sitting next to somebody sharing an experience without having the same first language.
It's really clear when you see children involved working at the woodwork bench, you typically see really high levels of sustained engagement as children are in that creative flow, problem solving, working out ideas, bouncing back when things have gone wrong, adapting and resolving your work. You can see it's just really high level learning at its best.